Good evening, YouTube and Facebook Live. I think I went live also to Periscope, which is Twitter. Yes, I did. Welcome into another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. I really greatly appreciate you all joining in tonight. I am a retired New York City police detective with 20 plus years of law enforcement. If you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon when I go live or when I upload another video. And tonight I have a really great show for you. We're going to talk about 4 months later, Orrin and Orson West. Where are our boys out of Bakersfield, California, California City? I want to just say quickly before we get into it, a special thank you to my Patreon supporters, my channel members, and all the folks who subscribe to this community. Without the great folks like yourself who support the DutyRon channel, this would not be able to be possible. So special thank you to all of you guys, my moderators, and all the great folks in here. The roll call, we're going to get into that in a few minutes, but let me play a little media. Tonight, Kget, Perla Sheehan did a small piece on Orrin and Orson West, who were reported missing out of California City on December 21st. Today is April 21st, 4 months to the day of these boys, our boys, missing. And I have a special guest. I'll introduce him in a few minutes. Dan Ribacoff from the Steve Wilkos show. He is here to analyze. He's a specialist in lie detection. He's a specialist in deception. This is a polished professional who has 30 years plus in the field, and he's going to be joining us just in a short period of time. But let me just show you the quick media here that we have to play. This is Perla's piece.
Welcome back. Today marks 121.
Hold on. I don't want to play that yet. Easy, newsman. All right, here we go, guys.
Marks 121 days, exactly 4 months, since Orrin and Orson West disappeared from their home in California City. The Bakersfield Police Department has not reported any new developments or leads in this case, but they say they have definitely not given up the search. And the activists that have gotten involved with the search themselves continue to hope for a happy ending to this story.
I think that they'll be found, and I want to believe that, so I believe that. And I just want to keep it positive, and I hope that other people will do the same.
Jennifer Nobles is one of many people who have put up reward money for information that leads to the missing boys. That reward now stands at $125,000. If you have any information about these missing boys that might be useful to investigators, you can remain anonymous by calling the Secret Witness Hotline. That number is 661-322-4040. We've been following this story from the onset, and you can find all the latest updates to this story on our website, kget.com.
I just want to remind you folks to don't forget that the tip hotline is still in effect for Orrin and Orson West. If you have valid information, valid tips for our law enforcement partners in Bakersfield and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, this is still an active case. And I implore each and every one of you who have valid information on the whereabouts of Orrin and Orson West to please come forward. Without further ado, before I introduce my esteemed guest that we have here in the green room waiting, I'm going to play a little media from Dan's previous work. He has polygraphed many stars. One of them that I wrote down here is Kevin Hart, Al Roker. These are just a few to mention some of the folks that he has strapped in, so to speak. I'm going to play a little bit of media from his lie detection test that he conducted on some of the folks over on the Today Show. And this is going to be an awesome piece for you guys to see some of the work that Dan does. So if you give me just 2 seconds, because I am technologically challenged, but I'm going to get it. I'm going to work it out.
White lies, whether we want to admit it or not.
In fact, a recent survey finds that only 5% of people tell the truth all the time, and those people, of course, are liars.
Yes.
Earlier this morning, the three of us got put to the test literally by getting hooked up to a polygraph machine.
It was terrible.
Moment of truth.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
What have I done?
Does it matter that I've had like a triple espresso at this point?
I'm also going to utilize a blood pressure cuff.
It's just another Saturday night at my house.
I feel guilty already.
Let me get a little tingly towards the end.
Oh,
though.
I was hoping.
Do you intend to lie on any of the questions on this test?
No.
No.
Absolutely.
Have you ever lied to your spouse about having lunch with an ex?
No.
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 Have you ever lied about your whereabouts to get some alone time?
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
You have?
Probably.
Have you ever told your spouse that they look good in an outfit that was unflattering?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yo, all right. Do you like your spouse's cooking?
Yes.
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 You do?
Yeah.
You sure about that?
Yeah. Well,
Have you answered each question on this test truthfully?
Yes.
yes.
Yes. See you later. He's like, liar, liar, liar.
Well, here now with our results is polygraph examiner Dan Ribacoff. Also with us, psychiatrist Janet Taylor. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
All right, so Dan, results.
Well, the results are we have a pretty honest morning crew here.
Really?
Yes, we've got a
we have.
pretty honest crew.
Your machine's not working.
This is the real deal, the real polygraph,
Yeah,
right?
it is. It's a real polygraph. Obviously, it was a polygraph demonstration. A real polygraph can take several hours to conduct.
wow.
It was stressful
Several
enough.
hours?
Oh my gosh, I thought I was going to have a heart
I
attack.
conducted one the other day. It was 3.5 hours long.
Wow. So
Yeah.
any questions that Willie lied?
No, everybody here was pretty honest. We had a lot of confessions, believe it or not, which we don't get too often on the polygraph before the
really?
test. We had Al and, of course, Natalie confess that they've hidden extravagant purchases from their spouses. So we've got some honesty here. We have Willie and Al both confessing that they've lied about their whereabouts to get some alone time.
Yes.
So you guys are going to have some problems.
We were
when you get
together,
home.
actually.
We were.
Oh, okay. And we have Al confessing that he's told his wife that she looked good when an outfit that she was wearing was unflattering. So that was a confession.
She looked good. The outfit wasn't.
Oh, there you go. That's the explanation.
Dan, I got to ask you, how much does the act of being under that much stress influence the results you get? Because I wasn't guilty of anything, but I sure felt like it.
It
sitting
actually
there.
doesn't. The polygraph doesn't measure whether or not you're nervous. It measures whether or not you're telling the truth. And we know from the advent today of functional MRIs that when you lie and when you tell the truth, you use a different part of your brain. When you use the memory and tell the truth from what's in your memory, your brain doesn't work as hard as it does as when you lie and fabricate and you need to use your imagination. That's why I ask you questions that I know are true. Is your first name Al? Is your first name? And then we build upon that.
So, Janet, when is it, or is it okay sometimes to, shade the truth or hide it a little bit?
Well, I think the reality is we all lie every day. We tell those everyday lies. But when you're thinking about relationship, family, friends, what's most important, as you guys did, tell the truth, because it's better to talk about an issue that may come up as opposed to imposing dishonesty and mistrust in a relationship, because then you could be telling the truth and your partner will always think you're lying. So it's very dangerous to just practice telling lies.
Well, and practice telling lies. A lot of us will tell like a little white lie because we think we're going to hurt the other person's feelings. So is there a better way to handle the situation? Is this an opportunity for us to communicate better with the ones we love?
Absolutely. Usually we lie because we want to present ourselves a certain way or we want to preserve a relationship. But tell the truth and deal with the aftermath as opposed to, again, injecting mistrust, because communication is so important. And think about a lie as a deliberate attempt to make somebody think that you're telling the truth.
So in Al's case, where he did not like the outfit Deborah was in, how do you handle something like that?
Like
you don't want to hurt her
said,
feelings.
honey, you look good, but maybe you should change the color of the pants, or I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you asked me. I think I prefer you in something else.
So, Dan, what are some of the physical signs you look for to determine whether or not someone's lying, whether on the polygraph machine or just out in life?
Well, before I polygraph you, we're going to have an extensive pretest interview. And in that pretest interview, we're going to look for leakage. People leak deception. Signs of deception are a lot of stuttering, and repeating a question. What's your name? What's my name? You know what your name is. What do you have to repeat? What's your name? Because they're looking to have time to fabricate that lie. A lot of restless body movements show signs of anxiety. Even chewing gum. If somebody's chewing gum, they usually chew gum at their heart rate. So if you watch the gum chewing increases, you know their anxiety is increasing as you question
What
them.
about long pauses?
Long pauses.
Some of us had long pauses.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're stopping to think and fabricate. So you're actually scanning your memory. And if you're lying, you're going to go to that imagination. But usually it's pretty easy to tell before a polygraph if somebody is being deceptive. And that's actually part of our credibility assessment process.
All right. Well, Dan Ribacoff, Dr. Janet Taylor, we
We
passed.
all
Against
have-
the odds.
Today's my 18th wedding anniversary.
Fascinating stuff. That's Dan in action. I have some other media, but I don't want Dan to fall asleep on us, so I am going to introduce him without further ado. Dan is named the top 15 in the USA lie detector polygraph examiners. He's got over 30 years experience. He's the founder and CEO of International Investigative Group. He's an expert private investigator and one of the top polygraph examiners, arguably, in the world. I want to introduce to you my next guest, Dan Ribacoff. Thank you so much for being here, Dan, and thank you for taking out your time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me on your show.
You know, I tell you, when I looked over your resume, I started taking notes and writing things down. And as a New York City detective, I know both you and I have law enforcement in our backgrounds. My head just exploded with the amount of information and the amount of good things that you've done. Now, I want the audience to understand something. Not only are you doing the Steve Wilkos show, right? The Wilkos show, you're also involved in private investigations, and you're doing polygraphs for the court system. You're doing polygraphs for the child welfare services, right? You've also been instrumental in finding somebody, helping someone get exonerated. I think it was Valentino Dixon, who was wrongfully convicted of murder and was serving a 27-year sentence. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was asked by the George Washington University exoneration class. They actually have a class on exonerations to look into several people that they were investigating to try to exonerate them from being wrongfully convicted. One of them was Valentino Dixon. Valentino Dixon in the early 90s was convicted of shooting and killing someone on the streets in Buffalo, New York. And he was sentenced to 27 years he was sentenced to 50 years in prison, but served 27 years by the time that we had gotten to his case. So the Erie County District Attorney agreed to have us polygraph him as part of the process to review his case. The district attorney had gone out, re-interviewed witnesses, looked at other forensic evidence, and they had a pretty strong suspicion that Mr. Dixon had been wrongfully convicted. So part of the process in New York State, in a 440 motion or a motion to vacate a conviction, a polygraph test is admissible to the court. And people don't know that. A lot of people say that polygraphs are not admissible, when in fact they are admissible in 19 states, and New York being one of them, especially in the 440 motion or the motion to vacate a conviction. I went up to Erie County pro bono. I paid my own expenses, flew up to Buffalo, New York, polygraphed Mr. Dixon for approximately 3 hours after an extensive interview and polygraph that took about 3 hours total. In the district attorney's office, Mr. Dixon was shackled at the wrists and around his waist. He was shackled around his legs, wearing an orange jumpsuit. And I polygraphed him about whether he committed that homicide, and he passed the test. Several weeks later, his conviction was vacated and he was no longer labeled a murderer, and Valentino Dixon was released from prison. We're good friends. We stay in touch. He's a wonderful human being and an incredible artist. And that was one of the highlights of my career, was to be able to get Valentino out of prison.
Wow, that's fascinating, Dan. And you know, the reason I brought that up is because, you know, us law enforcers, the folks like yourself who do these polygraphs, we get a bad rap sometimes, and people always say, "Oh, they're always finding people wrong. They're always finding," but no, when someone is telling the truth, when someone is coming forthright, and I want you to talk about the the accuracy of the polygraph exam. And I watch so much media on you explaining this, and you do such a great job of explaining about how the process goes. And so many people feel like, oh, there's ways that you could Google getting by this and things of that nature. If you could talk briefly about that, so the listening audience, there's over 400 people here watching, let them know about that.
Sure. So the polygraph has been around actually just the other day on April the 19th was the 100th anniversary of polygraph testing in the world. It was on April the 19th in 1921 when the first polygraph test was administered in Berkeley, California at the police department.
April 19th, my birthday.
April 19th. Happy birthday, my friend. So polygraphs have been around for 100 years. Just give me 1 second. Just dropped my ear pod.
This is the beauty of live. This is the beauty of a live show.
Exactly. So polygraphs have been around for 100 years. They're utilized by every law enforcement agency in the civilized world. If you go to Japan, China, you go to Russia, you go to South America, Africa, polygraphs are used. They're used by not only law enforcement, but by the military and by intelligence agencies, the NSA, MI5, Secret Service, CIA. Every agency uses the polygraph. So the polygraph is actually a physiological test. It's a recorder, almost like an EKG machine is. And what it does is it records channels from your physiology. And we look for changes in the physiology as a reaction to the stimulus of the question. So when we ask you the question, we look for the brain's processing. And what happens is your brain processes information and it processes the question. You look into your memory when you answer the truth. And if you want to lie to me, you can't lie from your memory. You have to go to the prefrontal cortex, which is primarily the area where you fabricate a lie. And your brain actually works much harder to tell a lie than it does to tell the truth. And that's what we measure in a polygraph. So it's actually a physiological reaction that you cannot feel and you cannot control. So when people say that you can beat a polygraph test, you can't beat a polygraph test. You can beat an inexperienced examiner if you have a lot of practice and skill in trying to manipulate your physiology and try to manipulate the tracings. But a skilled examiner is going to see that because what you're going to be doing is unnatural. So when it's unnatural, we know that it's a countermeasure to try to beat a polygraph. And there's only one reason to try to beat a polygraph: you're lying. So that is an instant fail of the polygraph test. With respect to polygraph accuracy, if you look on the American Polygraph Association's website, they have what's known as a metadata analysis, which is the analysis of the different types of polygraph tests, because people don't realize there's actually different tests in the polygraph exam, almost like you have an MRI, you have an X-ray, you have a CAT scan. In a polygraph, we have different techniques that we utilize. So the accuracy ranges anywhere from 80% to 99.4%, 99.4% being the most accurate polygraph test, according to the American Polygraph Association's metadata analysis. So the polygraph is actually more accurate than a jury trial. Let me ask you a question, Ron. What do you think a jury trial's accuracy is?
This would be a skilled guess because I've been around pretty long around this type of process. But I would say 60%, 65.
It's 75%. So the polygraph is actually more accurate than the jury trial. It really is, because what it does is it literally plugs into your brain and tells us what part of your brain you're utilizing, memory or imagination. And of course, imagination is where a person tells the lie.
Right. And that's what I found fascinating about your interviews. And I watched your Nat Geo. I watched your the Lie Detective series. I watched you talk about this so many times. And like when I hear people say, well, there's people that have been wrongfully accused based on lie detector tests. When I listen to what you have to say and what others, I had an FBI lie detector administrator. This guy did, I think, 29 years in the FBI. And out of those 29, 20 years doing criminal cases. And he explained there's like 99% accuracy. That is a tremendous figure right there. And, if you look at 99%, there's that 1% of error room for error, and a lot of it I feel has to do with the examiner and not the actual exam itself.
That's
So,
correct.
how many in your opinion, how many polygraph exams on a criminal level have you administered?
Over 15,000.
Wow. So I brought you on board tonight, and I appreciate you. Thank you to Tim Acosta, who is a mutual friend. I know you guys know each other a long time. Timmy is a great guy, a patriot, a great retired NYPD detective, him and his wife. He was kind enough to introduce me to you, and I am so indebted to him, and I'm so happy that I got a chance to meet you. But I brought you aboard because we're talking about the boys, Orrin and Orson West, missing out of California City, Bakersfield, since December 21st. 2020. And I got to tell you, there's so many people out there that are frustrated because there's been no action by the police department because of little or no leads. 2 little boys, 3 and 4 years old, just vanished off the face of the earth. But what's more telling about this situation is the lack of the adoptive parents to come forward. We don't know if they refused a lie detector or if they took a lie detector test, because the chief of police there is not going to give that information out because the investigation is still active. So the problem is the perception of the public. Everyone feels that these two, the Jacqueline and Trezell, are not being honest. And I brought Dan on to analyze their one and only interview that they gave to the news. And I'd like to show that now. But Dan, quickly, I know you had an opportunity to review that 13-minute interview, and I'm going to condense it down to 6 or 8 minutes. We'll play it. I want you, if you don't mind, to give us your professional opinion on their statements. But also, what I wanted to ask you before we started with this is the fact that they're wearing face coverings. Does that hurt in someone that does your type of work? I know facial expressions have a lot to do with people's interviews, but does that completely hurt your analysis of them?
It does affect the analysis. Obviously, we like to be able to have a clear view of them. This is a news interview versus a interrogation or an interview by a skilled interviewer, either a detective or a polygraph examiner such as myself. So a lot of times you don't get the reaction to stimulus because the questions are not asked. So that's the problem. Nobody ever asked them, did you do anything to these boys? And that's the question that is really very, very important. Right? Like if I asked you, Ron, did you kill John? Right? I want to see what your answer is. Is it no? Or why would I kill John? I like John. I didn't do anything to John. Right? So that's the direct question where you react to the stimulus. So that didn't happen in this interview. So we are at a disadvantage, but there's certainly a lot of things that I did gleam from this interview, and I've taken notes, and of course I'll go through them after we watch the piece.
Okay, and just for the listening audience, I gave Dan the option of us going through it and stopping it, but he prefers, and I respect his professional opinion, he prefers for us to watch it and then go back, and then he'll give his bullet points because he took notes, and he had the opportunity to review this before we aired this. So we're going to go back, we're going to watch it. It's going to be about 8 minutes, so if you guys can pay attention, and then Dan will give us his professional opinion on it. All right, I'm going to play that right now. The beauty of a live show, Dan.
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go.
Support we've seen. We've felt so helpless. And seeing everybody out here really looking and helping out really means a lot.
So, tell us what happened the night the kids went missing.
Okay. From our yard.
Okay. It was cold. I was gonna make a fire. It's a lot of wood in this area right here next to our house. I opened up the back gate. I'm throwing wood, bringing it inside the house. My wife's inside. She was actually wrapping gifts, so we thought it was a good idea that they got our youngest to go outside and play with chalk on the back patio. Do not let them go on the dirt in the backyard and keep them close. They was playing with chalk. And I came in the house. I saw them there. I went in the house. I came back out. I didn't see them there. I immediately went back in, asked my wife, did you see the boys? She said, no, they should be outside playing with chalk. I said, well, I didn't see them. So I came back outside and I started searching my backyard. I searched the whole thing. I realized that I left the gate open and I panicked, came inside the house, searched the house, me and my wife. Once that hadn't pan out, I got in the van. I looked down the street, both directions. It was getting dark, getting cold, and I got in the van and I hit a bunch of corners. I went down this street. I turned my light on. I searched. I called their names. Talked to a gentleman on the street on the other side over there. He didn't see me. So then I came home and I told my wife we need to call the cops. It's getting dark and I need help. We got to get going. So I called the cops. Cops came. First thing they did was tell us to stay in the house so they can get a hold of us. And they had us just sitting there and we wanted to keep searching. But everybody came out in droves. And I wanted to thank you guys that night, but we couldn't go outside.
The cops told us the best are out here.
The best are out here searching. And we appreciate it. And nobody ever could tell, we could never talk to anybody. And that was the issue.
We just want to thank everybody.
We really want to thank you guys.
Please, if anybody has seen them, please call, let somebody know.
Call the cops, call California the city police department. Call them and let them know what you've seen, if you see anything. Our boys, they are going to be rambunctious, okay? They are going to be here in this area. And I really would like to go in the houses, but it's not because I want to invade people's privacy. I just want to know if make sure. That's it. Because I don't, go ahead, I'm sorry. If you got any questions.
Oh, no, you're good.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to say, this is the first time we're hearing from you guys, and I can't imagine what you guys are going through. I can't even fathom it. For you guys, for people who are thinking that there's some kind of foul play involved, we just spoke to the biological mother. She says she had a conversation with you guys, and that she thinks there's some kind of foul play involved. That she thinks you guys did something.
And that's understandable.
What's your response to that?
That's understandable. I would think the same thing.
Yep.
I mean, that's exactly the point. And if we can find our babies, then guess what? That's no. And that's all I want is to find our babies. That's it. And I talked to her this morning, and I really wanted to tell her that I am completely sorry because we were entrusted with her children, and they came to us, and they became our children. We named them, and they are our children, and so we want them back. So please, if y'all could get back on what you guys are doing, we should be able to get a hold of somebody, but they took all of our tech, so they wanted to, I guess, just rule us out, which makes sense. That's part of the investigation. So that's pretty much it.
Have you guys, you talked to the police all last night?
Yes.
So you guys willfully gave them your
Everything.
technology?
Yes.
The car?
Yes.
How did they get a search warrant?
I don't see why they got one, but they got one.
Yeah,
we would have let them take
one,
anything.
but...
We would have let them take everything. We let them come in and search with us. We asked them to come do that.
What did they take?
Just tech. And that's it. Like our phones.
From the house?
Oh, well, I guess, should I answer that? Or?
Answer it does, yeah.
Okay. So into the okay, and I guess I don't even know.
I see. Yeah, we seriously felt like we needed to be out here. We did. Again, we were told the best are out here looking already, just to stay put. They have more questions. There was literally a cop with us the whole time in there.
He had sitting down. We would ask, can we go help? They had to sit down.
Said nope.
He said, no, we got the best out there.
So it's not.
Dan, I think that was enough. And you want me to let it go a little further?
Yeah. No, I think you're good.
Yeah, I think that was enough. Let me just take that off screen and I'll bring you back. All right. What was your takeaway there? I'll let you say your thing and I'll ask a couple of viewer questions.
Sure. So I'll first give you my opinion overall. Overall, I would say that the brief interview, and it is a very brief interview because, as you know, Ron, from being a detective, interviews and interrogations can take hours, if not days. So here we're looking at a interview of about 6 minutes, where basically the couple does the talking and very few questions are posed. There really are no questions that would invoke a serious reaction for somebody to try to assess. So I have to say that this interview would be labeled as inconclusive. We couldn't rule them out and we couldn't rule them in as suspects, but as parents of children disappearing in suspicious circumstances, I would have to say that they still are suspects or would be considered suspects by law enforcement. Once don't know certainly from this interview it would be deemed as inconclusive.
Right. Yeah, they are considered suspects. Well, they personally aren't actually called suspects by law enforcement, but law enforcement said the disappearance is suspicious.
Suspicious to say the least.
Right.
So the first thing that I see is that the father has his arms crossed with his hands under his armpits for the entire interview. That's very closed off. That's very protective of the body when somebody sits there with their arms crossed, and especially with their hands tucked under. It's basically protecting themselves. So that could be a sign there. But however, I don't know if it was cold. I don't know what the temperature was at that time of the interview. It could also be that he was nervous in front of the camera. So once again, that's something that stands out, but there could be explanations for it. I'm very down the middle. I don't, go biased one way or another. I call it as I see it, so like the baseball umpire. One thing that does stick out to me, Ron, is an unusual affect. If you look, there's no tears. There's very little emotion from the mother and the father. Where we've seen other such interviews take place, there's been a lot more of an affect.
Emotion. Yeah, no emotion.
Right, no emotion, very little emotion there. Once again, they could be in shock, so that could be the explanation for it. On the positive side, they do. The father especially uses a lot of pronouns. He uses I. I went to get firewood. I came back. I saw the boys, things along those lines. And the pronouns usually disappear when deception comes in. Saw the boys, went inside, couldn't find them, ran around looking for them, where they take the I's out, or the we, or the our. He does use a lot of pronouns, which shows a commitment to the statement. So that's on the positive side of the interview. He does use the word our, children, so on and so forth, which is basically ownership of the children. Unusual that I find is they never mention the names of the children. Right? Never mention he mentions them as the youngest two. He mentions them as them. He says, I didn't see the boys, which is deep personalization. I've had cases where people go, about their wife, I didn't hurt that girl. What do you mean that girl? That girl, she's your wife. What are you talking about? So depersonalization here is sort of a red flag in my eyes. Another area of concern is he says, I left the gate open and I realized it. Then I searched inside the house. Well, if you left the gate open, wouldn't your assumption be that they had escaped through the open gate? And wouldn't you go outside immediately to search for them versus going inside to search the house? So that's something that sticks out. I called their names. Once again, a little bit of depersonalization. Instead of I called Orrin, I called Orson. Never mentions the boys' names. Something else that I found significant was he mentioned that they will be in this area. which could be a sign of leakage if he has done something to them, that the boys may be buried in the field in the back of the house. How does he know that they would be in this area? So that to me is a little bit of leakage. When the reporter asks him about people thinking about foul play, they don't deny it. That's the closest to the "did you do it" question that the reporters got. He says, that's understandable. I would feel the same way. So they don't ever say, we would never hurt the boys, we didn't do anything to the children. Orson and Orrin are the loves of our lives. They never spoke to the boys. Boys, mommy and daddy love you. We can't wait for you to come home. So they don't deny the fact that they did anything to the children, although the question was not really asked directly, it was asked indirectly. I still found that to be unusual.
Now, when you have a couple like this, that I had Mark Class from the Class Kids Foundation on here. You know the story with Polly Class. I think everybody in the world knows about what happened in Petaluma, California in 1993. I had Mark Class as a guest on this show. And just before I get into that story, I want to say a special thank you to Marty Tankliff. Martin Tankliff, thank you so much for being in the audience. He sent a nice message towards you, Dan. He said, what a wonderful guest you have. So Martin Tankliff, he spent 17 years and was exonerated as well. He was charged with killing both of his parents at age 17. He spent, I think, 17 years in prison, and he was exonerated out of Suffolk County. And kudos to the retired NYPD detective that helped get Marty free, to spring him free. So he's here in the chat, and thank you for being here, Marty. Back to my guest that I had on with the Class Kids Foundation, Mark Class. The first thing he said to me on my live broadcast was, Ron, I wanted to clear my name with all the authorities so I can get out and search for my daughter. At no time do you hear these two say, hey, we want to get out there and search. They just keep making excuses that the police told them to stay inside. I don't know of any police department that would make two parents stay inside for 120 something days. The kids are missing 4 months to the day. Today is April 21st. They've never been out once, passing out flyers, searching. The adoptive dad's parent made statements and never once mentioned their grandkids by name. So there's a lot of red flags here as investigators go, and somebody like yourself. And the reason I brought you on here today is, you know, had these two taken a lie detector test, it would have, you know, if you're telling me, hey, Ron, you stole money from me, I would be like, Dan, hook me up right now because I don't steal. You know, I would be the first to say, hey, and you know what? And if that lie detector test says that I'm lying, then maybe I did steal it from you. 99%, right? But at the end of the day, these two, in my eyes, leaked deception. Look at the hands underneath the arms. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I know you said about cold, but you know, they're in California. He's wearing a Under Armour, shirt, and she was doing the swaying from side to side. I know that you probably took note of that too. What was your thoughts on that, Dan?
Right, those could be signs of nerves and anxiety from being in front of the camera. The hands crossed across the body, once again, as I mentioned, is very protective. I'm trying to protect myself. So that's something that could be indicative of deception. The swaying from side to side could also be an indication, but it could also be nerves. So we always have to be very careful to look at signs of nervousness and anxiety versus signs of deception, because sometimes they can cross over. So that's why I'm not, well, she's swaying side to side, you see she's lying, or he has his arms crossed and his hands under his armpits, he's lying. That's not me. If something is potentially anxiety driven, then I will always say it, but I'll say, hey, let's take note of it. And doing an analysis here is almost like taking pieces of a puzzle and then putting them together to see what the picture looks like overall. So the overall picture here, I would say, is inconclusive, but definitely not being able to rule them out because there are signs that get red flags in their statements.
In a community like California City, which is not a large community, it's not like what we're used to around in our neighborhoods. The community of California City and Bakersfield, where they moved from Bakersfield to California City. Both communities are feeling like they are responsible for these kids. Now, I mean, I think it would be in their best interest to come to the police department and say, "Hey, I want my name cleared. I want to get to the bottom of what happened to my children." But they did nothing of the such. They lawyered up, and the police chief said, "I can neither confirm nor deny whether they took the polygraph test, but they were asked to take one."
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. In credibility assessment, we always say that a truthful person would cooperate and that an untruthful person would not cooperate. It's just logic. It's simple logic. But generally in credibility assessment, we look for the level of cooperation from the subject, and that is indicative of, perhaps what might be telltale here.
Right. Martin Tankliff puts in the comments section, for example, many law enforcement agencies make you take a polygraph before you can be employed. And that's true. I think New York City has recently employed that the test. I didn't have to take it in 1991 when I became a cop, but many departments do it, and many private companies, right? A lot of these Fortune 500 companies make that part of the process, right, of becoming employed, taking a polygraph.
So actually police departments do. NYPD does not. We happen to have the contract for the MTA police, the Metropolitan Transit Authority police. So we do the polygraphs for pre-employment, where we search for what we call undetected crimes. Because Ron, you could have a clean criminal record, you could pass all the tests, but you could have murdered 150 people just that you were never caught. So you could be a serial killer. As far as Fortune 500 companies go, unfortunately, we can't polygraph people for pre-employment unless it's for a security position, somebody dealing with narcotics, manufacturing or distribution, armored truck companies, things like that, or government agencies. But for the average person, that can't be part of the hiring process as part of the law that was passed in 1988, the Employee Polygraph Protection Act. We can only do polygraphs after a certain event took place with an economic loss to the company. For example, we're doing polygraphs coming up at the end of the week on $850,000 pair of earrings that are missing from a jewelry manufacturer. So we're going to be polygraphing the employees to see if anybody's involved.
And it's funny that you just said that. My good friend Joey Brooklyn, who's here in the chat, he told me just today in a conversation on my way home from my office that back in the day he worked down in the Diamond District, and there were some gems that went missing, and the whole crew that was in contact with these missing gems took polygraphs. They were asked. They didn't tell them you have to take it. Obviously they were asked, would you be willing to take a polygraph? And he said he did, and he passed it with flying colors because he knew he didn't take anything. And he was like, I wanted them to give me a polygraph just to clear me.
Right, exactly.
Which circles me back to the Trezell and Jacqueline West. I just find it odd that if you are a loving parent and you really have the best interest of whether your kids are adopted or they were your biological parents, you would want to just clear your name so you could just move on with this process and try to help. Not one search with the community with searches, no cooperation with the police department, because if they were fully cooperative, they would willingly go out and say, "Hey, I'm taking this polygraph, and let's do this."
Right, I agree with you.
Any other takeaways from the interview?
No, that's pretty much it. The bullet points that I hit there before. Once again, I would not rule them out as suspects, and of course, with you filling me in, Ron, about perhaps taking or not taking a polygraph test, lawyering up is an issue as well. I can certainly see consulting an attorney, but I can
Right.
see that, if you're not going to cooperate with the police, and if you're not going to go out and actually search for your boys, I would be searching night and day. I have adopted twins myself that are 34. My daughter's a polygraph examiner. So, there's no difference. They're my children. And if something happened to my children when they were young or, today, I would be out night and day without rest looking for them. So that's
Yeah.
certainly indicative.
Yeah, Dan, we'd be at the rooftops with the bullhorns shouting their names night and day. There would be nothing that would stop me from trying to find my children. And
Exactly.
again, like I said, it doesn't matter whether they're adopted or not. They're your children. You raised
Correct.
them and yours. And my brother, retired lieutenant, he has a daughter who was adopted, and he married his wife from her second marriage, and that's his daughter. And
Right.
at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words sometimes, and the lack of action here is just I'm not an expert at polygraphs, but I can just say this is that for me as a seasoned detective, they just reek the guilt all over the place. And because I'm retired and I'm able to give my opinions, and my opinion is a professional opinion, these would be my number one and number two suspects right there.
Yeah, most definitely.
So they have been interviewed, and I don't know about interrogated, but they've been interviewed numerous times with California City Police, which is a small police department. Now Bakersfield is about 500 members, so they're substantially larger than the 13-member force of California City, or 8 members or whatever they had. But they didn't even have a detective squad. So the Bakersfield Police Department is now doing a lot of activity and search warrants, and over 20 search warrants have been conducted.
Wow.
Computers taken, all the computer forensics and things of that nature. So this case is ongoing, and a lot of people just are frustrated. I have 680 people here in the chat, and a lot of people are, chiming in with different stuff. Sophia, we covered Jacqueline's rocking and shaking. Dan agrees that it could be just nervousness. Some moms like to shake, rock with their kids in their arms, and that's another thing that people do all the time. But it does, to me, that stood out to me a little bit as being a bit odd, because she did it throughout the whole interview. Usually people who get a little nervous about an interview start to settle down at maybe the 5 or 10 minute mark. But she did it the whole time. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't really keep my arms folded like this for 13 minutes. It's just, I'm Italian. I have to speak with my hands. I'm all over the place with my hands. So me personally, I could not pull that off no matter what. But yeah, I mean, this is just such a difficult case because we're all parents and grandparents here, and everybody just has the best interest of these boys or finding these kids. And, we did all the statistics with Mark Class from the Class Kid Foundation. It's very rare that 2 children go missing together like that. 2 little boys, 3 and 4. It's a very, very rare thing that happens across the country. Single kids going missing, not. 2,300 a day get reported missing throughout the United States, which is an astronomical figure. But at the end of it all, we have to leave this in the police hands. We need the public to come forward with any information. If you see something, say something. If you know something, or somebody told a story somewhere, get that person to come forward and call those tips into the tip line. I want to look quickly into the chat and say thank you to everybody who is here positively interacting. I'm watching the chat here, and it's just going by so fast, but you guys are really tremendous. If there's any questions that you might have for Dan or myself, put them in the chat now. I'll try to cherry pick some of the questions, but I do want to take a moment to promote Dan's website. I'm going to pull that up here. This is official Dan Ribacoff. Am I saying that right? Ribacoff?
Yep, Ribacoff, yes.
What's your nationality? What's your background, Dan?
It's actually it's a Russian name. I was actually born in Brazil and came to the United States when I was 3. But my dad is originally from Asiatic Russia, and Ribacoff in Russian means fisherman.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, because I know I was going to get that question. I know some people are going to ask me about that. All right, so here I'm going to go full screen on this. This is Dan's website. I'm going to go full screen. There we go. So it says private investigator and polygraph examiner. Dan is an international lecturer on credibility assessment, as well as a published author. You got a couple of books out there, Dan?
Yeah, I actually wrote a book with St. Martin's Press, 220-page hardcover called I Spy, How to Be Your Own Private Investigator. basically it teaches you what you need to know to sort of keep yourself and your family safe.
I love it. I'm going to link that down below in the description so you guys can go over and shop. They could pick that up on Amazon, you said?
Yeah, Amazon has it. A lot of other bookstores have it. It's been doing very well.
I'll add it. I'll link to it for so you guys could click on it down below and purchase that. I'm sure it's a great read. Also, talk a little bit about how you got connected with Steve. I know a lot of people are going to ask me questions. Look at this handsome devil. Who's this guy? Founder and president of International Investigative Group. How did you get connected with Steve Wilkos?
Sure. So I had done some TV previously. I had done the Tyra Banks show. I had done some work on soap operas. And in 2009, Steve was being moved from Chicago to Stamford, Connecticut, where NBC was going to bring several of their shows, Jerry Springer, Maury Povich. So they reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in becoming their polygraph examiner. Went up and interviewed with them, was hired by the show. And coming up now, it's going to be season 12 for me, season 15 for the show. So I've been with the show coming up on 12 years now.
Wow. And I mean, what a great relationship you must have with Steve. He's a retired Chicago cop. He was, I believe, Jerry Springer's security guy, right?
Yeah, correct. He was working off duty, as a Chicago cop. Obviously, the salaries aren't great when you're a cop. I don't got to tell you, right? So he was out there working his side job, and his side job became his career, where he eventually got his own show 15 years ago. Steve's a great guy, a wonderful interviewer. Really has a knack for knowing what's going on. I'll polygraph people, but he'll never know the results of the polygraph test. And 9 out of 10 times, if not 9.5 out of 10 times, he'll know whether they're lying before even the polygraph results come out.
Wow.
Yeah, he's just a great guy. Love him. Wouldn't want to work with anybody else.
You guys seem to work really good together. You guys got a great mojo going on. I watched quite a few episodes in the short time that I started talking to you, because prior to that, I never saw an episode, but I watched quite a few. I binge watched, and I actually, I got to be honest with you, I fast forward through to the part where he says, "Let's bring Dan out," and then at that point that I love. Out of these videos that I have shown up here, which one I want to play one of these? I know I'll get a copyright strike from Steve's show, and if I do, I'm going to rely on you to talk to the producer to get me the rights to play this.
Gotcha. Yeah, anyone there, probably let me just put my glasses on so I can see a little bit better.
There's one at the bottom with you and him. You says you explain 4 different types of lying behavior.
Yeah, you can do that. That would certainly be indicative of what we were speaking about this evening.
Okay, let's do that. With sound, that would be nice.
Today we're going to take an in-depth look at my guests' reactions after they fail a lie detector test. I have Dan Ribacoff, my lie detector administrator, with me, and we're looking at 4 specific reactions: fight, flight, freeze, and surrender. Let's start with one of the easiest reactions to spot: flight. Dan, why don't you tell us about that?
Sure, Steve. We all have primal instincts that are in us. They've been there since the caveman days. When we perceive danger or feel threatened, they kick in automatically. In the case of flight, basically we just run away. You're right, Steve. A deceptive person hides behind his lies. He uses them as a mask. When a polygraph result is read, then the mask is taken away from that person. So not only does he run, but this guy turns his head and body away from you as he speaks. That too is a primal reaction.
Took a little bit of encouragement, but Angel did confess.
Steve, you were very persuasive, and his wife was very calm. Those 2 factors made Angel realize that his best choice here was to surrender and admit his guilt. That confession came incrementally, though. He denied it at first. He confessed about thinking about doing it. Then he confessed about fooling around, and eventually he confessed to what he had done.
So far, we've seen 2 specific reactions to failing a lie detector test: flight and surrender. But now we're going to look at the most explosive reaction: fight.
A fight, Steve, is the most explosive and extreme reaction. That happens when a person is threatened. Their adrenaline kicks in, and they want to fight their way out of that situation as they perceive it to be dangerous. Just like an animal, they lash out when they're cornered. There we just saw a person who is obviously violent, and when his lies are exposed, he reacts just as I would have expected him to. He tries to physically dominate others in making them believe what he says. Those are the most dangerous types of liars.
Dan, tell us about freeze.
Steve, I best equate this reaction to the deer in the headlights. When a person is judged deceptive, they don't know what to do and how to react. So they're stunned as they are unable to continue to deceive others.
This guy just failed for molesting his daughter, and all it seemed like he could say was, wow, wow. He just kept saying it over and over. One word, wow.
Well, Steve, that reaction is a passive one. When he says wow repeatedly, and then he continues to deny that he molested his daughter. This reaction offers a person the time to think and assess the situation. It can lead to continued denial, as we have seen in this clip. Other times it can be followed by fight, flight, or surrender. Steve, this segment showed us a person who was devious, manipulative, and most importantly, fearful of losing the good things that he has. When his lies were exposed, he could no longer maintain his fake appearance of being a good guy. Steve, your incredible interviewing skills brought forth his confession that he did cheat and was in it only for the money. He eventually surrendered after you applied pressure.
So tell us, Dan, what reaction is this?
Actually, Steve, this segment showed all of the primal reactions. He becomes argumentative and aggressive at first, although he doesn't physically fight. He then freezes as he thinks about how to best get himself away from the threat that he's now facing. He surrenders and admits to cheating with 3 women. Then ultimately there's flight, where he runs away and he realizes that he's been exposed as a deceptive person.
Fascinating. I love it. I love it. I had to play all of it because I get sucked into that.
Yeah, obviously the clips were removed from there because it would be about a half-hour to 45-minute clip otherwise. But it described the basic primal reactions of fight, flight, freeze, and surrender.
Perfect. Now, again, everybody can go on over to Dan's website. I'm going to link everything down below in the description. And if you guys have any questions after the show, please leave the comments down below in the comment section. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so you will get all things DutyRon when I go live or when I upload a new video. I plan to have Martin Tankleff on as a guest to tell his story one day, because I really want to get together with him. It's just, he's such a busy guy that narrowing him down is actually tougher than narrowing Dan down. And I only got Dan early because they're on their downtime with the show. If he was taping for the show, this would probably be an impossible thing. But I got you here, and I hope that you will come back again and visit us, Dan.
Thank you very much for having me, and having Marty on your show will be an excellent show. He is a wonderful human being. Nobody does more for exonerations than Marty. As a matter of fact, Marty was the one who got me involved with Valentino Dixon's case, and I'm currently working on another case with Marty to exonerate somebody else. So I take my hat off to Marty. He's a good friend and probably one of the nicest people on this planet.
Fantastic. And you know what? I'd be open to actually doing a show dedicated to maybe a complete from the beginning to the end of getting someone exonerated, because I think that that's an important part of our criminal justice system. It just shows you how flawed it is and how somebody who is wrongfully accused can go to jail for extended periods of time. We talked about 27 years, what you did for Valentino Dixon, and also what happened to Martin Tankleff himself. So I would love to get together with you guys and collaborate and do something, use my platform to get that message out there. And, you know, with COVID restrictions, I'm fully vaccinated. Hopefully down the road, another year from now or whatever, we can all get together in a studio and sit down and do and put a show together.
That would be great.
Listen, I want to just say again, thank you to Dan Ribacoff from the Steve Wilkos show. Guys, go over and support him, buy his book, go onto his website, watch the shows when he's on there, support him. Again, I'll link everything down below. As I like to end all of these live streams, I want to just say God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here and all victims of crime throughout the United States and across the world. Thank you, Dan. Thank you to all my Patreon supporters and everybody in the chat. Good night from New York City, from DutyRon and Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.